In May last year, I landed my dream job. I was so proud of myself. I had been going through a really difficult time, but I was holding it all together like a superhero. Just 6 months earlier, I had experienced the biggest disappointment of my professional career. I was an assistant principal at a network school, and I had spent 2 years preparing for a role that I wanted more than anything at that point. It was hard work. Not for a lot of money, but if you work in education, you know how fulfilling that can be. I'd spent time and energy motivating teachers, working with kids who were in the age group where they're still trying to figure themselves out. I had devoted all of my resources, both in terms of my mental and physical energy and my own money, trying to come up with solutions, trying to motivate a really exceptional team that I had the honor to work with. And it took everything I had just to get us through each year. So when that rejection came through, it felt like a rejection of me, of my own identity. The natural question was, who was I? If this was not what I was going to do with my future, who was I? Certainly not this fragile mess. I couldn't stop there. If you've ever been in a long distance cycle race, you know what I mean. Even with so many fluids streaming down your face that you don't know which are sweat and which are tears, you do not stop on the slog to the top of Chapman's Peak. You've got to keep going. That's what I told myself anyway. So I took stock, tried to figure out, who was I? Without my job to distract me, without all of the things that I had been doing to keep me busy, I took a look inward. I looked for that stubbornness that I'm so often so proud of. Sorry, Mom. And in taking stock of my life, I didn't like what I found. There were a lot of things that I had been ignoring for a long time. When you open the garage doors and you haven't looked in there for a while, you are bound to find some cobwebs. And boy, did I find some cobwebs. I started out by examining my relationship with myself. There were a few narratives that I'd been running on repeat for years, and I wanted to fix that. I took up meditation. I started being more mindful about the things I exposed myself to, my self-talk. Next was the other most significant relationship in my life, my marriage. It had been going badly for a few years, and I decided to get a divorce. I wanted to live my full potential, to be the version of myself that I had in my mind, and that was one step I took towards doing it. I needed to address my health. My weight had been burgeoning for years also, and it was starting to impact me in negative ways. I wanted to be able to run with my kids, to get back on my bike and cycle up Chapman's Peak. And so I took steps to resolve that. I decided that in my career I couldn't stay where I was. I needed to take some change. I needed to grow. So I reverse headhunted 2 organizations that I most wanted to work with. Went through the first round of interviews with both, finally pursued the one I really wanted and was selected. Remember the dream job? And in the week I took up my shiny new role, I started volunteering as a mentor for high school girls, something I'd also wanted to do for a really long time. So I was at the top of Chapman's Peak with my shiny new heels on, ready to take on the world. I was really proud of myself. 3 weeks later, I was lying on stiff beige sheets that smelled like disinfectant in a hospital bed, with the surgeon inserting a central line into my vena cava through the center of my chest, writhing in agony and trying to keep still while he did what he needed to. And I was massively shocked at the speed of my descent. I had just crashed. Anyone who's ever been on a flight knows parts of that safety announcement off by heart, right? There's one part in particular that says, in the event of a loss of cabin pressure, please secure your own mask on first before assisting the person next to you. But surely it would only take a few seconds to help the person next to you. What if it's a little kid and they really can't get their mask on? Surely they need your help? Put your own mask on first. Why? Well, because hypoxia. Inspired by a friend of mine who gave a TED talk on the subject recently, You Rock Harry, I watched a video in which a demonstration of this problem was given. Destin Sandlin, who is a science communicator and engineer, went up at altitude to show us what hypoxia looked like in action. So it's a condition that is caused by the loss of air pressure at altitude. And it's something that has different beginning signs for different people. So astronauts and pilots train to recognize them so that they know how to respond appropriately. In his demonstration, Destin left his mask unattached for a period of time so that we could witness what happened. He began firstly by completing a child's shape puzzle. You know, the one where you pick up a square and you put it in the square hole and so on. Initially, he completed it easily, of course. But the longer he remained without oxygen, the more woozy he seemed to become. So at one point, he couldn't even name the shapes he was picking up. The most worrying part of it all is that he seemed really happy. He was in a really dangerous situation, but he seemed to have no comprehension whatsoever of what to do, even when told he was seconds from death. He could not simply reattach the strap. Thankfully, before it got to that critical point, someone stepped in and helped him. Someone who had put their own mask on first. So, whether you start out with tingles or nausea, the end result of hypoxia is the same for everyone: death. At 35,000 feet, which is the cruising altitude for most commercial aircraft, realistically you have about 20 seconds of useful time. You can survive for longer, but critically, you will be literally useless to everyone around you, including yourself. So, what does this look like outside the metaphor? Let's take a look at 3 common symptoms. 1. Fatigue. We've gotten so used to wearing exhaustion as some kind of badge of honor, some kind of proof that we're productive and hardworking. Yeah, we should be working hard on our goals. And yes, working hard makes you tired. But are you making the best use of your time? Are you apportioning your energy and resources wisely, spending it on the things that take you closer to your goals? Are you making sure that you're feeding the things you need to so that you don't find your fatigue impacting your follow-through and stealing from your future success? 2. Euphoria. What are you talking about? Surely happiness is a good thing. Yeah, but there's a concept I've come across in the teaching space that's known as optimist without a cause. It looks a little something like this. I'm really stressed, I'm really tired, I haven't finished my grading, I don't have time to get to bed early, I need to work late, I've got a whole lot of things to do, but it's okay, I'm a positive person, I can power through, there's always a silver lining, the glass is half full, I'll watch a few good memes, I'm happy. There's a difference between giddy optimism and a good attitude. The one will help you power through difficult moments and resolve challenging situations. The other will keep you distracted from the actions you actually need to be taking to course correct. So it's important to make sure that you're grounding yourself in happiness that comes from actual achievement and not distracting yourself with something called toxic positivity. 3. Confusion. In Destin's demonstration, that was him saying, I don't want to die, but not putting his mask back on. What does it look like for you? Have you ever had a deadline in a couple of hours and you chose that moment to rewatch the last episode of your favorite Netflix series? Or you know that your marriage needs some attention, some TLC, but you stay at the office late to finish up a task that you could have done the next day. It's really easy to spot poor choices when they're happening outside of yourself. It's pretty easy to point out to a friend that, oh dude, I don't think that you're making the best choices for what you want to accomplish right now. But it's a little more difficult when it's internal, right? So if the choices you're making are not making the most sense for you, if you seem to be confused about your priorities, as demonstrated by your actions, then you may be in that stage. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl teaches many lessons. The one which resonated most deeply with me is the idea that your ultimate freedom is choosing how you respond to situations. Frankl wrote from the perspective of someone who arguably had the least control over his environment, an actual prisoner in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. In many ways, his was a story of responding to the constant threat of psychic hypoxia. Reality was not to be trusted. Death was always just one event away. In our daily lives, the signals are often much more subtle, but we can learn to attune to the signs. Take note of your energy levels over the course of a day, a few days, a week, a month. Being tired all the time is not normal. Take the advice that you'd give to a dear friend, and if you can't put your own mask on, ask for help. Be suspicious of the heady adrenaline rush that comes with constantly putting out fires. Unless you're an actual firefighter, in which case thank you very much for your service. Joy is a marker of progress, comes with the achievement of goals, this is true. But don't allow a false sense of optimism or toxic positivity to blur your response to signals that need attending to. Normalize finding joy away from crises. If you become aware of a pattern of self-sabotage, you say you want to go to the gym but you never put your clothes ready the night before, you know you need more sleep because you're feeling really tired but you're not getting yourself to bed, then you may need help unraveling that. That could come via a good friend, a coach, even a mentor. Treat yourself like someone that you've been tasked to help, because you are. I'm still working on many of these things myself. I've gotten a little better at putting my own mask on first. At the very least, I'm much more aware of the signals when they come up, and I do make an effort to respond to them. There are lots of tools and tricks that you can use, and it's not a one-size-fits-all response to every situation. But it really is important to put your own mask on first. How will you do that for yourself today? See you next time.